Hey, what's up? Jonathan. I'm a web developer documenting my journey of opening up a Pokemon card shop online in 2025. And along the way, I'm going to be sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly with you, everything in between, just giving you my honest take. If you missed the first video that I dropped on the channel yesterday, I would encourage you to check that out. I talk a little bit about my history with Pokemon, why I'm doing this, and like some of my intentions behind opening up the card shop. So today's video is going to be about Japanese Pokemon cards. And I'm going to tell a story of why I turned to them and how I was able to source some of the first Japanese cards that I'd ever gotten. But before we get into that, I know that if you're into Pokemon, you're probably aware it's really difficult to find cards in the big box shops right now, and it has been for at least 2025, maybe a little bit before that. I think all of this really started to come into play when Prismatic Evolutions came out, that specialty set sometime in January with the Evolutions. And the set is a really big set, but there's a very small minority of the cards that are like worth a lot of money. I think the general public caught on, and you got some folks that don't really care about Pokemon so much, that are just like see it as an opportunity to make a quick buck and flip things. And then you've got a lot of collectors and everybody else just trying to get their hands on as much of it as possible, because the cards are really cool. But anyway, if you've been in any of the big box stores lately, like Walmart, Target, you know that it's really difficult to find products on those shelves. And a lot of times when I find myself in those stores, like once every week, maybe a couple of weeks, I'm in there like 2-3 times. I always like to check out the card aisle and toy aisle. I always see dudes there with their phones out looking up prices and stuff like that. I think it's silly. And inevitably I always see parents there with kiddos that are trying to find just something, anything, any kind of Pokemon packs. And the kids are always like, "Mom, Dad, you don't have any Pokemon." Man, it just breaks my heart. It takes me back to a time when I was a little boy. And growing up, we didn't really have much money at all. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. We're all pretty close in age. My younger brother and sister, we were super tight. We were kids growing up, and Mom worked and Dad worked a couple of jobs, had us super young, and most of the time we stayed with grandparents. And they worked really hard just to put food on the table and clothes on our backs, and we always had everything we needed, but we never really had a lot. And I think back to some of the times when I would get to go to the grocery store with Mom. We'd go to Walmart. My brother and my sister are there. Sometimes we'd go with Aunt and some of my cousins. It would just be a big thing, Times were different then. Yeah, and we wouldn't get them all the time, but every now and then, we'd beg Mom for, to get a Pokemon pack. Or back then, I think you could get the check lane blisters in like all the check lanes. I might be wrong in that. Not just the card aisle. But yeah, I just remember thinking, like, I'd do whatever I had to do to get my hands on some cards as a little boy. I would beg my mom, my brother and I, we would beg. And every now and then, Mom would say, "Okay, I'm gonna get you this one." I would get to get a starter deck or something like that. And she would tell us not to tell our dad because we really didn't have the money then. They were just trying to make ends meet, not spend money on Pokemon cards, But I'll never forget those times. We didn't have a lot, but every now and then we would get some Pokemon cards, get to share, trade, play, watch the show on TV, and just imagine that we were Pokemon trainers ourselves. So, yeah, and then just to think, like, all the kids today who just aren't able to get packs just because they're not even there. It's insane. So, yeah. Anyway, right now, things are really tough because Pokemon is in such high demand, at least the English product, right? But one thing I figured out earlier this year is that you can buy Japanese product and it's not as high of a demand, and the supply is like seemingly infinite, which is super cool. But the problem is it's not as accessible to the everyday person. I mean, I think anybody really can do it, but I don't think everybody should, or that everybody will. And so, when I was growing up, most of the cards that we were able to get our hands on came from Walmart. You know, I grew up in a small town, and there's a county next to it. Like, we kind of went back and forth as I was growing up between those school systems, and I don't remember there being a local game store or anything like that growing up. Maybe we had one, I just wasn't aware of it. But yeah, I remember having friends that had Japanese cards, and I always thought they were so cool. The artworks were different. Of course, they had the Japanese type on them. I always thought that was really neat. But it wasn't until earlier this year, in 2025, January, that I decided that if I'm going to start this shop, I got to find a way to be able to source cards regularly. And that's what led me to learn more about Japanese. And I was able to get my hands on some Japanese product, open up some Japanese product. And, without having the history of and nostalgia of growing up with them as a kid, I wasn't really too attached to them. It wasn't really, it didn't seem like anything crazy to me, but I learned to really love the Japanese cards. Some of the things that I really like about them is the quality of the prints is a lot better in Japan, and the cut. Moms and dads probably don't care about that too much, but the artworks are a little bit different. I think they're super cool. And they're a little bit cheaper. They're less expensive than the English counterparts. If you go into a store these days, you're gonna pay like $5.99 for a booster pack. But with Japanese, you could easily get a pack for $2.99. And there's some differences. I'll get into those in just a little bit between English and Japanese, but onto the story. So I realized I have a little bit of English product from my personal collection that I've been working on for the last 6 years or so, sealed products that I'm going to offer for sale. They are actually available right now on victoryroadcardshop.com. I try to keep those English sealed Pokemon products as reasonably priced as possible, but I know that inevitably, once people find out about those and they go buy those, they're gonna be gone. I'm gonna have a hard time sourcing those again for a fair price or a wholesale price, and be able to resell them. What I would have to do is probably find more of them on the secondary market at market price, which is generally higher than MSRP, and then resell them at a higher price to make money. And it just didn't make sense. So Jonathan, why don't you just go get one of those relationships with a distributor? It's funny when I talk to people who don't really know too much about Pokemon, but maybe they have some experience with distribution from other stores. They're like, dude, it's easy to get distribution. Just go get that. And I'm like, well, see, the problem is the supply is really low, demand is really high, and distributors, their ideal customer is a brick and mortar store because they've got more skin in the game. You know, they've got rent to pay, they've got building costs, utilities, employees, and they have to churn product in order to keep the lights on and stay in business. But there's people like me who pop up with online shops all the time, and they can just turn that off whenever they want. So like, why would the distributors spend time developing relationships with people like that who, you know, it's a lot easier for them to like fly by night, get in, get out, make a little money, do whatever, you know, maybe not just take it as seriously, that kind of thing. So it really makes a lot of sense to me why distributors would want to focus on the brick and mortar stores. Now I know it's possible to develop a relationship with distributors and get my hands on Pokemon products at, you know, wholesale prices, so then I can turn around and sell it on the shop. But the reality is, I'm just trying to get a good, honest start. And I know that until I develop a little bit of a following and get some sales on the books for a year or two, like, I don't even really want to think about that. I don't think any distributor would take me seriously. I know that I probably wouldn't if I was in their shoes, and I think that's fair. But the thing is, Americans can't go to Japanese distributors and say, hey, give me a pallet of you know, the glory of Team Rocket. Like, they don't work with folks that aren't Japanese. But what I've learned is that there are like middlemen. I think technically they're distributors, but they purchase product, a lot of it, from these Japanese distributors. And then they do the same thing, they sell it. And they're cool with selling to folks like in the US, like me. So what I learned is that a lot of these Japanese distributors, we'll call them, they hang out on Instagram. And so if you want to find them, you got to go to Instagram. And I learned that you can't really just like pull out your credit card and punch in your info and buy from them. Like, it's kind of sketchy, really. It's a little bit shady. It seems like super sketch to the average person. I remember telling my wife about this and some of my friends and family, and they're like, dude, that sounds kind of sketchy. And really, it is. And that's why I can't recommend it for everybody. You know, you're taking a risk. Sending a stranger money, and it's halfway across the world, on the other side of the world, and just hoping that they're, number one, like honest enough to actually send you product, you know, that they're going to move forward in good faith. And then number two, like all the moral, like ethical stuff aside, just like hope they don't like get hit by a bus after you send them all your money, because there's like no recourse for you at that point. You're just out the money. And for me, just starting out, like I'm not, you know, doing super large transactions, but the thing is, if you're just ordering a booster box, or one or two at a time, it's not really worth it, because you're gonna pay a good chunk in shipping. It's like 25 or 30 bucks just to ship one booster box. And the thing is, if you get like 9, of course shipping is a bit more, but you get a better value. You're able to get more and pay less for shipping, and so it just makes more sense to get it in bulk. And for like the average person who's interested in buying Japanese cards, and maybe not necessarily like a collector, maybe they don't take it super seriously, they just casually like want to collect it, it just doesn't make sense to pay the cost, to go through all the trouble, take the risk to source these cards from Japan. But for someone like me who's trying to get a start, totally makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. Because there's a little bit of money to be made. You know, someone like me does the heavy lifting of, say, getting on Instagram, messaging a bunch of Japanese sellers, a bunch of them don't reply back. Maybe one replied back to me in the first day. A handful, when I say handful, I mean like 2 or 3 maybe total replied back to me in the first few days, and then the rest just left me hanging. And then from there, I spent a bunch of time doing some due diligence, trying to learn about really this one company that replied back to me immediately. I can't find anything about them online. I Google their company, there's nothing there. I found a Facebook profile. The most recent post was a year ago, it was summer of 2024. But I noticed at that point that they were posting regularly. It seemed like every few days they were talking about a new set, they were showing cards, they were showing off the product, they were showing off their big warehouse full of cases of booster boxes like these right here. So it seemed legit, that was a good sign to me. That was a trust indicator. I go back to Instagram, I'm looking at the reviews, and I find myself thinking are these reviews even real? Am I gonna send somebody my money and then they block me and then go away? What's gonna happen? But I decided it was worth a shot, I want to get this thing going. I'm willing to put a little bit of money on the line to try and make things happen. And I know the reality of opening up a card shop, especially online, this year, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be so tough. I really, my expectations are that I'm not gonna make any money. My hope, I'm operating under the assumption that I'm gonna break even, and I might not even do that. But I'm trading that to try to build a good book of business, develop relationships with customers so they can get to know me a little bit, understand my intentions, which, by the way, if you hadn't checked out the first video that I posted yesterday on YouTube, highly recommend to check that out. I talk a lot about my backstory and why I wanted to start this card shop. Yeah, I just want to do good business. I want to do good business and do business with excellence. I know that Pokemon is going to be around for a long time. It's probably going to outlive me, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon on that. In fact, you'll hear me talk a lot about the magic of Pokemon and the impact that it's had on my life as a kid, and how I still stand by a lot of the things that Pokemon has taught me over the years. And I just want to share that with the world. I think that's so important in a world where politics are polarizing people, and it's all doom and gloom and all that stuff. I just think about the magic of Pokemon, and when I talk with my friends and family about Pokemon and their children, everybody lights up. It does something to us, and I love that. I can't explain it, I can't put my finger on it, but I think it's such a cool thing, and I just want to share that with other people. So yeah, I know that I'm probably going to spend a year or two just making a little sale here or there, hopefully not losing money, but shipping things out quickly, building up reviews. And my aim is to be able to offer Japanese product and English product. Of course, I'm gonna have to sell a bunch of Japanese and my personal collection off. I'm gonna have to put off my personal collecting for a bit to get this thing going. That's how serious I am about just sharing the love of Pokemon, and how badly I want to be able to just move this stuff and also hold on to some of it and collect it as I make some sales. So yeah, I just keep thinking about Japanese. It's such a cool thing. It's so different than English product. With the English booster packs, you get 10 cards in every pack. For the most part, there's some exceptions. Usually one energy card, a lot of commons, like uncommons, things like that. You know, these days I think you get like it's like a holo in most sets. You know, back when I was growing up, there's like in the 90s, you'd get a rare and it's like non-holo, and like we would be stoked about that. These days I have friends with kiddos that are opening up Pokemon, and like they're just so bummed when they don't get like an SIR or a full art or something crazy. Yeah, they're just bummed out. They like really want the hits. And what I've learned is Japanese packs have the hits. They've got the cool arts. The quality is better. You get less in the packs. You get 5 cards per packs, unless they're like specialty. But a lot of these, like this one right here, this is the Japanese equivalent of Battle Partners. It's called Journey Together. You can see this little number 5 right here. Just means if there's 5 in every pack. In a booster box, you get 30 packs. And so it's a little bit different compared to an English booster box of 36. And each pack has 10 cards in it, and there's an energy in all of those. But the other thing is, you know, like these days, I think most folks are gonna have a hard time finding booster boxes for what below MSRP, what we used to know as MSRP, which was like maybe 110, 120, 140. And then for like, feels like just a moment in the last year, it's like 150, 160. And now we're stoked when we can get booster boxes at 200. And a lot of the new sets are coming out at 250, and then they crash down to 200. I don't really think that's a crash. I think it's just like market noise, right? Like everybody's always excited when something comes out, and then the hype kind of dies down. The flippers make their money, and then people hold things and open things, and then later on things start to climb back up in value as those sets go out of print. But you know, $200 for a booster box in English, and then like, I don't know what I have Battle Partner selling it on the site right now. I think it's $80, $79.99. Something like that, might be less, which is one of the more recent sets. And then we've got some of the older sets here, which isn't even really like that old. This is Stella Miracle. It's the like Japanese counterpart of Stellar Crown, and part of it, to keep it simple. I think right now on my site, victoryroadcardshop.com, you can get this for $49.99, $50. So not a bad deal. Yeah, and I think people are going to continue to look for more and more alternatives as the market just continues to go up in this bull run. You know, I've heard a lot that people are just hoping, and you know, the Pokemon companies like release statement after statement saying that they understand supply is low, they're doing as much as they can to make that happen. But what I'm hearing folks say who are in the space a lot professionally, they're saying that it takes Pokemon about 10 months from the time it's printed to release a set. So sets that are being printed, say January of 2025, theoretically, if what I'm hearing is true, you know, would release in like October. It takes about 10 months to catch up. So we're not there yet, but we're coming up on that day where Pokemon, I just gotta hope that Pokemon has turned up the printers. You know, I think it's starting, the market is kind of starting to take a turn where I'm seeing people buy like a bunch of Journey Together Elite Trainer boxes and then return them to Walmart because they couldn't sell them for a profit. Like, they shouldn't even be able to return those. Like, trading cards should be final sale items because they're so easy to like reseal. Like, where there's money to be made, there's counterfeiters, there's scammers. So I just think it's such a silly thing if Walmart did that. But Yeah, I just heard, I think earlier yesterday, that somebody like bought a bunch of Elite Trainer boxes from Walmart, probably for like 40, 50 bucks a box, and then tried to sell them for, I have no idea, you know, just speculating, but like 100 bucks, 150, 200 bucks. And then after they realized like nobody's buying them for that, they returned them. I think we're gonna see more and more of that as Pokemon is able to like turn up the demand, turn up the printing, and meet the demand with more supply. I think that's going to push a lot of people out of the hobby who are in it for the wrong reasons. Yeah, you know, in the meanwhile, a lot of folks have like turned to collecting singles. You know, I'm working on master sets of like stuff that I collected when I was a kid. You know, I know a lot of folks are really big into PSA cards right now, the graded cards, slabs. People are looking at other card games like MetaZoo and Flesh and Blood and Weiss Schwartz, and it's neat. Me personally, like, I've done the same thing. Like, just recently got into Magic. A friend of mine's got me into that, and it's super cool. Of course, I believe in Pokemon. I grew up in Pokemon. I think it's going to be here for a long time. So like, this is my main thing. But it's nice to spend the time doing something else and like taking my mind off all this stuff. Constantly thinking about it and focusing on it just kind of gets old after a while, and I don't want to lose the magic of Pokemon. So yeah. I know we rambled on a lot, but if you guys have enjoyed this video so far, would appreciate a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to try to drop a couple, handful of videos like this each week. And if you want to go buy some from the store, that'd be super cool. It's live right now, victoryroadcardshop.com. I'll see you there, and I'll see you in the next video.